Hello, good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be with you on this, like Jamie says, this lovely, cold, fresh evening. So hopefully we will sort of be spiritually and mentally sort of stretched in the best sort of possible way this evening. Our topic is religion, or the religions, and the gospel. But hopefully we'll have a bit of fun together as well. And I'd like to sort of kick off with a game. And I do need sort of two brave volunteers to come up to the front here and be participants in my game. And just to tell you as well, just so you know, full disclosure, you will be lightly tapped on the head with a feather duster. So, yeah, thank you. Don't all jump at once. So I just need a second volunteer, please. Thank you so much. Either side is fine. Does not matter. So what we're going to do, so people of a certain vintage, sort of my sort of age perhaps, might remember a Saturday morning kids TV game show that was called Mallet Smell It. Somebody, yeah, I could see a few nods. So what Mallet Smell It was, it was kind of like a word association game. So you would start off with a word. So let's say it could be television, and then what's the first thing that comes to mind?
X Factor.
What?
Cartoons.
Simpsons.
Bold.
Right, you can't hesitate. So if there were any pauses, any hesitations, any repetitions, any words that wasn't, associated with the previous word, that you get a back in the head like this, or like this, and then the person with the least, the person with the, so the person with the least bruises at the end of the end of the game was the winner. So you're up for a game of Mallet Smell It. So to begin this game, we always had to turn to one another and go blah. So you need to do that. Okay, excellent. So we can get kicked off. So the first word, just let me consult my words. So our first word is, we'll start with you, sir. So the first word is this gentleman. Puppies.
Oh, cute.
Dog.
Cute.
No, that's a repetition. Right, the next word is, we'll start with you, Grace. Trees.
Green.
Leaves.
Autumn.
Worms.
Right, here's Lancaster.
Nice.
Lovely.
Cute.
I don't know. My brain is just
Right, next word. Dentist.
Painful.
scary.
Haunted house.
Ghost.
Clowns.
Freaky.
Spiders.
Terrifying.
Gigantic.
Ow.
That's a repetition. Right, here we go. These are next word is art.
Beautiful.
Pretty.
Red.
Orange. Orange.
Green.
Yellow.
Autumn.
Leaves.
Warm.
September.
Apples.
Yeah, no, I can see September and apples. I can see that. I can see that. I can see that one. Right.
Season fruit, I don't know.
But everything seems to come back to autumn as well for some reason. It doesn't matter what word I say, that we get autumn and leaves. Right, so this is getting more to the crux of our topic this evening. So our next word is religion.
God.
Jesus.
Good.
Holy Spirit.
Nice.
Church.
Cold.
Nice people.
And then our final word is gospel.
Jesus.
Oh, Very similar.
Holy Spirit.
God.
Heavens.
Angel.
Cosmos.
Mm.
Universe.
The stars.
Moon.
The sun.
Sky.
Sports.
I'm afraid, Grace. Right. Well, I hope neither of you are too bruised from that. So give them a round of applause. Thank you for volunteering. So what I'd like us to do is just sort of continue doing a little bit of word association around these two different terms. Sort of like perhaps if one or two people want to join this group over here, just so we've got a few more numbers. I think in this corner, if we think about the category of religion, what other words come to mind? And then if you're feeling brave, perhaps you might want to sort of come up once you've kind of harvested all your words with a bit of a definition of what religion is. And on this side of the room, if we can do exactly the same thing with the category of gospel, just think again of what words you associate with that category. And again, if you want to come up with, it doesn't need to be an absolute watertight definition, but something that we can discuss and work with. So I'll give you both groups 5 minutes to have a think about that. Is that clear? Everybody knows what they're doing, yeah? So to just sort of do like word association, kind of what other words kind of do you associate with the word gospel, and just have a discussion among yourselves on that. Are we sort of ready to sort of share our thoughts? So the religion group, if somebody could just maybe just sort of share a few of the words that you harvested together, and then just maybe one or two of the thoughts that you discussed. A set of rules, yeah.
And then I think when we say it's like a set of rules, it seems like a bit strict and like it can have like negative like connotations as well. And then we were like saying different things like beliefs and like it's like worldwide or within religions and stuff. But then also that some people, like this is what you were saying, some people will say they're religious, but sometimes that doesn't really mean anything. So they might like they say they're religious, but they don't mean it out unless they really do it.
And our gospel group. Good news, yeah, absolutely.
Truth. Grace. Resurrection. Love.
Yeah. Truth, love. These are all quite sort of positive associations, really, quite sort of positive connotations. Whereas I think it's probably fair to say that in this group it's a little bit more mixed, it's a little bit more ambivalent. And I think that's probably sort of generally true of how that word religion is sort of viewed in our culture, really. You sort of quite often hear people say that they're spiritual but not religious. Have you heard sort of people say that? And I think people are wanting to communicate that, you know, that they think about the higher things, but for one reason or another, they're quite suspicious of a kind of like formalized kind of rules-based religion, you know, for some of the reasons I think you've suggested. So I just want to sort of unpick this word religion a bit more and sort of think about it in terms of what it means, kind of what's called its etymology, its the origin of the word. And it's got an interesting etymology. If we look at the classical Latin word is religio, and that's derived from a couple of different terms. So one of them is a word religiare, E-R-E, and that refers to kind of a sense of moral obligation, kind of a sense of conscience or conscientious, a sense of a binding duty, and it doesn't necessarily mean to a higher power. It could be to, you know, in a secular sense, to the people around us. It's got both of those meanings. And then the other sort of origin of the term is a word called religiaire, and that's to do with what binds people together, the ties that bind us as a human community, and also the ties that bind us to a higher power. And that includes all of those kind of ritual sort of things, those like the customs, those moral laws, just the thing that when I was at school, we used to sing a song, "Bind us together, Lord, bind us together with cords that cannot be broken," and that is, quite a deep sense of what this word religion means. I think this group commented that it's a universal sort of thing, this religion, isn't it? It seems to be universal, really, in history and across human culture. My wife and I have recently started watching a program. It actually came out a few years ago, but it's on iPlayer. Sort of Neil Oliver, who did sort of Coast, he's sort of done a series on ancient Britain, and it starts very, very, very sort of far back in ancient history, in sort of Ice Age times, and he's looking at sort of cave paintings, all of this stuff long before written culture. But it seems as if our very, very sort of ancient ancestors were asking some of these religious questions. Who am I? What is my relationship between the natural world? What happens when we die? There's all these incredible ancient tombs. There's these mysterious stones. What on earth do they represent? But it seems as if our very, very ancient ancestors were religious. In that sense. I think humans always ask these questions, don't they? Who am I? How did the world come to be? What is good or evil? What is right or wrong? Will I live after death? Why is there suffering? Is there any ultimate justice in the world? I think Homo sapien, it's could be argued as also a homo religious. We all seem to universally ask these questions. And God, I think, throughout history has never left himself without some witness. Humanity has never been without religion in some form. And the hunger for answers to these questions never disappears. It doesn't disappear in our culture, which in some respects is post-Christian, some would say is postmodern, but those questions are still very, very much alive. They don't disappear even in officially atheist cultures, do they? So some sort of, communist China, communist Russia, and that sort of places like that sort of tried to, sort of quash those questions, but they don't go away, do they? They don't seem to be able to go away. And so how does Christianity relate? How does it respond to religion and to the religions? Well, I think that the best Christian teaching is not contemptuous of other religions, but views each history of religious struggle and questioning as evidence of divine providence and the presence of the Holy Spirit in all of human history. And insofar as the religions contain things that are good and true, they are what I would call preparations for the true light and knowledge of the gospel. And I think a really good example of this is Acts 17, that famous event of Paul visiting Athens. Now, Athens was an extremely religious culture. So like Paul is actually quite distraught by the number of idols that he sees all over Athens. And I don't think we should be naive. I think because of our fallenness, I think the religions, as well as sometimes having things which are good and true, often have things which are in error, which even sort of some examples of human religions. We think of human sacrifice, for example, sort of things which are very, very dark indeed. So Paul isn't naive. He's quite distressed by all of these idols, and yet Paul's approach isn't to march into Athens and absolutely condemn, all, everything that he sees around him. And instead, he looks, doesn't he, for that little sort of chink of gospel opportunity. And he finds it, doesn't he, in the statue of the unknown God. And this is Paul's kind of, okay, this is my way in, but because he's recognized something which is good and true, that there is a God who is above all gods, who is a name above all names, who can't be brought down to our sort of categories. He's not, a Zeus or like one of these sort of Greek gods. He is something absolutely ineffable, absolutely different. And so Paul uses this, doesn't he, to make a bridge, to make a dialogue between gospel and between the religions. And I think that is a really good example to us. And in fact, he even quotes a pagan poet, doesn't he, when he says, this is the thing in which we live and move and have our being. Well, that's a quote from a pagan poet. So again, he's just always looking for these bridges, for these dialogues, for these ways in. And so that sort of brings us to our question: is Christianity our religion, or is it something else? And I think my answer would be both and. Both yes and no. So I think, in a sense, I think we have to say, yes, of course, Christianity is a religion. It does have, doesn't it, practices and rituals that bind the community together and binds the community to God. It does, like many of the world religions, have priests. It has worship. It has rituals. It has temples, and so on. But Christianity sees itself as completing and fulfilling the idea of a religion. What is a true religion? Well, I think a true religion can be said to be true insofar as it leads people to the true God and to life in communion with the true God. So Christianity doesn't claim that no truth exists in other religions, but what it does say is that amid all the half-truths, amid all the shadows, amid all the errors sometimes of the religions, and including, I would say, to some extent, the Christian religion itself, because we need to remember, don't we, like Paul says, that we do see through a glass darkly. We don't see on this side of eternity that God as God fully knows himself. So, I think we need to keep that in mind as well. But in the Christian religion, the true God has become personally revealed once and for all in history. And so all religions contain some truth concerning God, for God has not left himself without witnesses. And yet, Jesus' words are authoritative, aren't they? And we can't avoid them. Jesus says, "No one comes to the Father except by me." And so what makes Christianity, I would say, different from all world religions is the incarnation. It's the incarnation that makes Christianity totally distinctive in the history of the religions. That's not to say that other religions don't have distinctive features too, but only in Christianity is the promise of God to Israel fulfilled by God's own personal coming in the flesh. And Christianity differs from the religions of the world, and that its understanding of God comes not from human striving, not from human intellect and will, not from human moral performance or human moral brilliance. Thank goodness, because that would be an absolute disaster, wouldn't it? But it comes from God's own self-disclosure in human history, first of all through the people of Israel, and then culminating and clarifying itself only in Jesus Christ. And I would say that after Jesus, religion can never be the same again. So, I've got again a couple of questions to have a think about. So first of all, I said earlier that sometimes people in our culture today sort of describe themselves as spiritual but not religious. I think if that was somebody that you came across in your sort of day-to-day life, said, well, I think it's lovely that you've got this Christian faith, but it's not for me. But certainly I'm a spiritual person, but I'm just not interested in formal religion, people sometimes say, don't they? Which makes me wonder sort of how informal people want the religion. But anyway, that's that's my sort of discussion question really. How would you have a sort of a productive dialogue with that person who is spiritual but not religious? If I could just invite you, both groups, just to have a chat about that for 5 minutes. I think that sounds like some really interesting conversations going on. So what we'll just sort of come back into the middle and. Somebody want to sort of share some of the thoughts and discussion they've had? So the question was, how can you have a productive dialogue with someone who is spiritual but not religious?
Just add to that, some people are religious and spiritual.
That might be the next question.
I don't know if you
I would say, well, if someone said that to me, I would say, well, first of all, what do you mean by being spiritual? What does that mean to you? I feel that's the starting point, really, depending on what they imply.
I think I heard sort of both groups sort of chat about sort of like manifesting and that kind of thing. I think we do live in a remarkably. I mean, I sort of tend to think. I think especially like with young people, especially like students, it feels to me as if like next to nobody is a kind of like a scientific materialist. Kind of like everybody is, you know, if they're not a religious, if they're not following one of the faiths, that they're spell casting or manifesting or whatever really. You know, it's extraordinary when you go into Waterstones, and in a way it's quite sobering really, because I think that the religion bookcase is this quite sort of like skinny little thing, and then you have like a mind, body, spirit section, which is like sprawls, you know, kind of like most of the floor really. So we're certainly in, you know, interesting times, aren't we? And it does, I suppose, feel quite a lot like Paul in Athens really, where there's so many ideas and so, you know, it's such a sort of pluralist kind of sort of culture really. It's an interesting time to be alive and a Christian. Any other thoughts anybody wants to share before we move on?
We didn't talk about this, it's live kind of thing. I think spiritual people who don't have religion, I think it's proof of the human need of the desire for God.
Absolutely.
But it's just where they, I guess, divert that, what they know they need. And some activity and some activity that, yeah. But all, I think everyone, maybe not everyone, but the majority, has this some sort of hope or belief that there's more than this.
There's a phrase that does be about that we've all heard. There's a God-shaped hole in every person. There was a piece of research scrolling about, I don't know, 48 years ago or so, and the research suggests that no tribe or group or cohort of people has ever been found in the universe that did not have a religion, a worship, an idol of some sort.
That's right.
Everybody has it within.
Another phrase that came to mind for me was looking for love in all the wrong places. You know, I think sometimes. I mean, I'm a dad of, you know, sort of one teenager and one who's a bit older than that now, really. But of course, you know, what you really want for your children is for them to find romantic love with somebody who's worthy to, you know, to reciprocate that properly, really. But I think, yeah, I think there is a religious instinct, but it can fly off in all kinds of wild and wonderful and you know, sometimes damaging directions.
I don't know if it's maybe just specific to the one all the people I know who are spiritual, they kind of started off with religion and it kind of faded into, like, I know that there's something out there and what causes them to test their spirituality is also a fear of religion, that like, it could be like treatment they face in an institution, or just like the fear that like the structure or element of it, just like things like make them feel scared. Maybe I see what it was about religion in the first place that made them reject it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, really important points, and I think, yeah, we never really know what what baggage people are carrying, really, do we? And I think it's so important in all of these dialogues that they're done sensitively and compassionately, and so thank you for raising that. So the next thing and final thing I want to discuss, I want to sort of flip this phrase on its head, really, because I think most of us are quite used to this idea of people presenting themselves as spiritual but not religious. But I think an increasing trend is the opposite of that, for people to understand themselves as religious but not spiritual. What do I understand? What do I mean by that? Well, I think if we sort of think back to what I was saying about religion being a force that binds people, I think increasingly lots of people are coming to recognise what a powerful social force Christianity in particular is, in terms of social cohesion and sort of social unity. And as kind of we arguably as a culture become more and more divided and more intolerant of each other and so on, I think lots of people are becoming admirers, friends, allies of Christianity for sort of cultural, social reasons, but wouldn't or don't find themselves able to make that leap to sort of confessional faith. And quite often people would say, well, I just can't imagine having a kind of Paul on the road to Damascus experience. That's not something I feel. I'm very sort of dubious about the metaphysics of Christianity, although I like Christianity, I admire Christianity, I'm a friend of Christianity. That these people might even be in church every Sunday. Kind of I suppose we would call them cultural Christians. Kind of a generation or two ago, really. I think that trend is again kind of on the rise, really. And so that's my next question for discussion. How do we have a productive dialogue with that sort of person, that person who is religious, who really recognises the important binding value of Christianity, but is not spiritual, just doesn't feel able to make that leap to say Jesus is Lord, to make that confessional claim. So let's just sort of spend some time thinking about that too. So just if we come back into the centre, sorry to cut this group off, and if anybody wants to sort of share anything burning that they've been chatting about, sounded like some really interesting discussions again. Don't be shy.
It's something that applies to me in a lot of ways, different things, and contemporary investigation. Jane,
Like coming to something with an unconscious bias, perhaps a prejudice or a predisposition that leads you to discount it.
So as it related to that, there was a church pastor who wanted to give an example of arrogance or hypocrisy to his flock, his church. And he said, in the morning I get up out of bed and I go to the bathroom and wash my face and look at the altar and make sure the teeth are in and brush my hair and brush my prejudices beautifully for that new day. Make sure prejudices are all in my order and then go into the new day. Polish prejudices. We all do that.
Well, thank you. I think that there's been some really fruitful discussions. I'm hoping you're storing up loads of questions, and that you've been sort of prompted to think about things this evening. I think we'll sort of move on to the sort of Q&A bit of our evening. Do you want to come and take a stool as well, Jeremy?
Yeah, if people just want to send in, if you've got anything on the Slido, text it in now. And we'll give you a couple of minutes for you to send things in. And did you have a question, Jorge?
It's a big question on the board as well.
Oh, great. Well, you start this yours, and then we'll go to this one.
Yeah, well, a question that I often find in my work with university students is, sure, Christianity is a religion, but one of many. Why is Christianity a true religion as opposed to Hinduism, Islam, you name it? Yeah, I think that's a question that potentially is valid in this context of this
Of course.
conversation.
I don't know if we've been sort of following a book by Tim Keller called The Reason for God, and the previous chapter of the book, and it was the topic of the previous Café Theology that we had as well, was to do with the problem of sin, and what sort of Tim Keller is arguing, of course, is that sin, if you like, is the human problem, but then at that point, if you acknowledge that premise is true, the question is, well, why Christianity? Why can we not, get rid of our sin by following one of the other religious faiths? And I suppose the Christian response would be that we're on an absolute hiding to nothing if we feel that in our own efforts we need to ascend the ladder to God, that we need to out of our own performance to somehow I don't know if any of you ever watched The Good Place. It was like a Netflix sort of show, and like basically they were also like trying to get to heaven. But it was almost like life was almost like a computer game where if you did a good deed, then you would get some good points that got you into the good place. But then if you were selfish or nasty or mean, whatever, then you would get sort of debit points. And I think it can be so easy to fall into the trap of thinking about morality, thinking of merit in that way, really, that it's all about us. I just want to sort of do a bit of a particularly dark example of this, really, which is sort of Jimmy Savile, and I think one of the things that quite sort of disturbs me. There's lots of disturbing things about the Jimmy Savile story, of course, but I think he was a person who definitely on some level believed in judgment, who believed in heaven and believed in hell. But I think he had an incredibly distorted idea of it, really. So he was a person who did extravagantly wicked things. But then I think his sort of moral compass was that, well, if I do extravagantly good things, if I run marathons, if I earn millions and millions for charity, I hope that when I get to judgment, that somehow the balance of all of my good things will outweigh all of the terrible wicked things that I've done. I think the gospel is that is just so ridiculously the wrong path. It's just not even, I can't begin to say that Jesus has, it's all grace, that Jesus has taken all of the good things that we'll ever do, as well as all of the wicked things that we'll ever do. It's Jesus' merits as he holds all of the rubbish that we've done on the cross. And as the gentleman said at the beginning, nothing in my hand I bring, simply to the cross I cling. And so I think Christianity and the grace that we find on the cross is the answer to the problem of sin. It's not our own performance. It's not our own, effortful stuff.
It's a very difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because there's so many factors. Like, have you got an agreed understanding with that person of what truth even means? And what kind of truth really matters to them? What kind of person are they? What's their experience? What's going to resonate with them? Because all of those things are factors in how that question might be answered for that person, It's a tough one, isn't it? So in all of these things, I think sometimes you pose a question like that, but of course, without having the person in front of you to actually begin to sit down and talk with and understand, it's very difficult, therefore, to know exactly how you would answer, would you? But I think what Francis has said is very helpful. but there's lots of other ways you could go about answering it as well. It's a bit of a cop-out answer, really, but I think we're always in the middle of this dealing with people, aren't we? And I think that's really important to remember. Next question on the slide was, would you say our aim should be to be both religious and spiritual with God? And I was, before we kind of got to the last question that you asked, Francis, I was thinking about people that say they would do, spiritual but not religious. And I thought, well, sometimes I'll be guilty of in the church being religious but not spiritual. And there is this kind of great hunger in culture at the moment for spiritual experience, and it seems sad that everybody seems to find that everywhere else except for the church. And maybe there's something of that we've been guilty of not tapping into properly. I was listening to a podcast we've both been listening to. Have you listened to the latest? Not the latest one, the penultimate one. Not the penultimate one. But yeah, the second to latest one. It was a really interesting story. Two mythologists, storytellers, poets, who come from, I guess, a kind of background of spirituality / bordering line paganism, and it's really interesting. Both independently had come to faith. Both independently decided that the place that they wanted to root themselves in terms of Christianity was the Orthodox Church, and both expressed just like how unattractive church had been to them when they'd gone to a church and it was like, coffee machines and Starbucks and somebody playing the guitar. Jesus is really cool and relevant, and all of the kind of spiritualism and mysticism stripped out in order to make it relevant to people. And they were like, instead I want to stand up for 3 hours and chant Bible passages, which seems like, that would never want to attract anybody to church, would it? But for whatever reason, like, that's what they connected with, because it was a profound spiritual experience. And so I do think that we need to be both. I do think it depends what you mean by religious, and it depends what you mean by spiritual. But I do think that there's an extent to which we need to capture both of those things. In terms of, I think often when we say the word religion in that context, it means organised religion. Sometimes I think Hope Church is not organised, so therefore not really organised religion, are we? So, but there's a sense in which where we're there's something that's beautiful about us coming together as an organised community where there is structure and there is accountability and there's the ability to do things as a community and reach out to the Lord in ways which we all know and love, and that's why we're here at the end of the day, that you cannot do by yourself. But those things cannot be done without also those things that are of the mysterious and spiritual, and encountering the Holy Spirit and prayer and tapping into cult practices within the faith that stem back hundreds if not thousands of years. And there's something incredibly powerful about that, in combination with the sense of we are an organised religion, and holding those two things together I think is vital to being a force for good in the culture.
Yep, agree. I'll get a plug in for John Wesley, because I always do. I'm a stan for John Wesley, as the kids say. So John Wesley said an important thing, which is he said that the Methodist movement had to continue in the doctrine, spirit, discipline, with which it first set out. And I think that idea of holding together doctrine, spirit, discipline is a way of holding together, I think, the spiritual and the religious. And so just to sort of unpack that a bit, I think it's so important to hold those things together, because I think if you have doctrine and discipline, but you don't have the Spirit, you're not listening to the Spirit, you're not sort of listening to the prompts and the leads of the Spirit. I think that the church can dry up, can't it? It can become quite a dry thing. I think if you have the Spirit, if you have religious enthusiasm, but your doctrine's gone awry, your discipline has gone awry, then I think the church can really mess up. It can really kind of spin out in some wild and crazy and destructive dimensions. I think if you hold together these things, you hold together good, solid doctrine, you hold together accountable discipline, and those practices of Christian discipline that we're doing communally and doing individually. if you hold together listening to the Spirit, then the church doesn't dry up, it doesn't mess up, but what it does is grow up, and I think that's what we must do is hold together those things, doctrine, spirit, and discipline, and that's, I think, another way of saying we hold together the spiritual and the religious.
That's really helpful. Yeah. And leads really nicely onto our final question, which is, how do you put in place spiritual disciplines without being like the Pharisees? Is it good to put these into place even if they become religious and into a routine? And I think the answer to that, broadly speaking, is yes. It is good. I was reminded of this question reminds me of a story I read a little while ago of somebody who grew up going to an Anglican church where they said the confession every single Sunday, and he said sometimes he'd say the confession with tears in his eyes as he was, just weeping before the Lord. Other times it was just dry and meaningless and going through the motions. But there was a sense then when it came to him as a father and his own son came to him to forgiveness, all he could do was forgive him, because it's like this had been ingrained in him to such a deep extent that he could only react in that way. And it's a bit like karate. I think I've used this illustration before, but it's a bit like Karate Kid. Has anyone seen the film Karate Kid? Do you remember how the poor chap learns karate? Jackie Chan makes him clean all those cars and paint all those fences, and it's wax on. Do you remember that? Wax on, wax off. And he's painting the fences, and he's like, why am I even doing this? And then when he gets into that moment when he's in the fighting karate, all of a sudden it makes sense, and he's like, whoa, yeah. Whatever it is, and he does the karate fight. And I think it's a bit like that with the spiritual disciplines. That there are moments, I think, when it's like, I just don't even know why I'm doing this, but it feels a bit dry and boring, but I'm kind of still doing it. And then there's the moments when it really counts and something becomes instinctive and reactionary because it has just been so stilled down, into your mind. I don't know. Just a moment of temptation and desire when it overcomes you, and then just those words come back to you because you've recited them so many times. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And it just has that power to break something in you because you have ingrained that within your soul. First you form your habits, then your habits form you. But doing that to yourself has to be a discipline of grace. Something that you do out of a choice, like an athlete who gets up and trains every single day in order to be a fantastic runner or sprinter or jumper, does that because there's something that they really, really want. And at times they probably would rather have a lie-in, but because there's an ultimate aim that they're going for, they get up in the morning and they go and do their training or whatever, because this is a greater goal that's in mind. And so I think there's an extent to which there's always two levels to our desires, aren't there? There's the kind of desire for what we really want, and then there's the desire for what we want on Monday morning at 7 o'clock, in the morning, which is not, and often they are not the same thing. Speak by experience, stay in bed. But one has to kind of outwin the other in order to achieve the greater thing, and that is the beauty and the strength of spiritual disciplines.
You've reminded me of, I have a sister whose name was called Edith in Northern Ireland. And she is an ultra Northern Ireland, ultra Protestant, ultra evangelical. She will not watch anything on television after 1 second past midnight on Saturday night, or 1 second before midnight on Sunday night, because it's the Lord's Day. So watch garbage on Saturday night.
Yeah. And I think we, in all of these things, we have to not be judgmental to do about, in terms of the fact that we would all have, slightly different ways of doing that. And that's another way where we're not pharisaical about this. I'm not, as Hope Church, we don't say, well, you have to do it this way. I think we all figure out, to an extent, and there is wisdom in what the church has done through the centuries, and there's wisdom in what other people have done in their lives. And I'm sure speak to Ken and Brenda down here, and I think we'd all gain a lot of wisdom from learning how you guys have done it over the years, because you've been there, and that's right. So there's so much wisdom to learn that can be passed on, but it's not like, well, Ken did it, so we all have to do it, because we're all. we're all different to that extent as well. So it's not that it's pharisaical of, oh, you have to do it this way. Of course, athletes, for example, using the same illustration, will all train in slightly different ways according to their particular body type and discipline and weaknesses and strengths and all the rest of it. So you need your own, training program as well.
Absolutely. Those kind of like habits of the heart, really, isn't it? Is really, really important. So I just want to sort of think about that again. That sort of category of person who's religious but not spiritual in this context, really, and that person who sort of says, well, I'm a friend of Christianity, I'm an ally of Christianity, but I've just not had that road to Damascus experience. I've not had that flash of blinding light. And I think what I would say to that person is actually do those habit forming things, like do go to church on Sunday, do be in praying communities, do bring yourself under the word and the sacrament, because the thing with like the Bible, there isn't just one sort of road, sort of conversion, sort of like story in the Bible. We think of the road to Damascus, but another really important meeting with Jesus on a road is the road to Emmaus, and that's a real slow burn, isn't it? Because it turns out they're accompanying Jesus on that road all the time, like Jesus is with them, and Jesus in that narrative reveals himself, doesn't he, through the words. He breaks open scripture with them, and then when he sort of does when he breaks the bread, that's when they see Jesus. But I think it is those habit forming things. It is scripture. It is being in a community of word and sacrament and prayer. And I would just really give people encouragement, to just, like, sometimes that walk is a slow burn, like sometimes it's not a blinding flash of light, but that's no greater or less than any other sort of way of meeting Christ. Like Jesus can be very, very patient with us, can't he? Just those, like Jamie says, really, those things, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just these things that Christians have always done. It's prayer, it's Bible study, it's meeting together for fellowship. These are just essential building blocks, I think, of the Christian life. And sometimes it's a slow burn process, but then it was Jesus all along, and that's what they found on the road to Emmaus, wasn't it?
Wonderful. Well, should we sing to finish? Davina, would you like to come and lead us? And we're just going to sing Amazing Grace to finish, because, I guess that's at the crux of what we have been thinking about tonight, that, we are religious, we are spiritual, and the way, I guess, in which we really hold all those things together is through the grace of the Lord to us, his kindness to us, which means, we by choice enter into these things, and by choice we are brought into the freedom of the riches of Christ given to us. So, should we stand?